Good afternoon, everybody. I'll let you see me first of all, and then I'll come on to some slides. It was interesting what Suzanne was saying about how SMEs react to the way they are. I think that one of the things that we do see is that companies spend a lot of time looking at what's happening today. And because everyone's rushing so fast and working so quickly, people often don't have the time to be able to step back and go, hold on, let's look to how we got here and let's look to where we're going. I guess that some of you will have come across Swoop, but I'll make an assumption that a significant number of you haven't. And I'll then put into context in terms of what we're talking about today. We're an under one roof integrated platform for grants, equity and debt, going about 5 years, about 90 odd people in the company, operating in UK, Republic of Ireland, Canada, Australia, just starting in the States. And the strength of the proposition is that in one place, you've got all of those different funding solutions. So you can play one off against another, work with over 1,000 different funding providers. But that's not the main bit for today. Yep. And when the company was set up, we had a number of secondary services. And those secondary services were, how a company can review their banking costs, how a company can look at their credit score, how a company can look to get their utility bills reviewed. And they were there, but we never saw much action with them because people would just sort of go, great, I'm coming to Swoop because I'm looking to buy that business down the road. I'm looking to get a grant. I'm looking to raise equity. And those secondary services were there, a bit like a list that people didn't get around to do anything about. That began to change. I don't know if anyone remember when there was the Black Swan event. I think it was about 18 months ago when utility prices suddenly jumped through the roof. When that happened, we work with around about 750 accountancy practices. All of a sudden, the accountancy practices that we're working with, a good number of those started turning around and saying, help, we haven't got our clients onto your utility tracking service. Is it too late? And we were kind of going, well, there's not so much you can do on the fact that prices have spiked, but we can look to help them at a later stage. So the secondary services that we've got have begun to become on par with our primary services. So bearing out what Suzanne was saying about 32% of SMEs citing their main concern as being energy and utility costs, we're seeing that, but we've always been placed to be able to help with that. So let's just jump onto the slides. Here we go. Look, we have, Swoop, under one roof, equity, loans, grants and savings. I've kind of covered this. We are a tech-led platform where it's a very, very easy journey for a company to register with us, add their details, but then there's going to be a relevant human being who will be able to jump in. And that relevant human being that you're talking to is going to be an expert in whatever particular area you need support in. And one of the strengths that we have is if somebody's talking to us and they're going, I'm looking for X, the team are able to go, do you know what, you're looking for X, but you should also speak to this team as well. So an easy example of that is the company that comes into us looking, let's say, for debt for their business issue today. They're looking for debt. And the team member goes, actually, bearing in mind what you're doing, you really should be looking at what grants are available. And I'll come on to how that works in a second. Okay, so the 8 steps, and this is a combination of, to put it bluntly, stating the bleeding obvious, and also things that we're seeing in terms of how we can help people. We all know that if you walk around most city centres, you will see all hours of the day, lights blaring, and people just wasting money with their energy costs. There's a guy who works energy company that we work with, who whenever I've seen him in a building, he's not concentrating on the building in terms of the meeting, he's concentrating on all the switches that are on. And I've seen him go, if that was turned off, that company saved the company X pence. If that was turned off, it would save them further money. So the little things do affect, and the bigger the company that you've got, the more likely it is that your culture will be that people don't have the same proprietorial instinct as you do about being a business owner. Number two, we work with a company, and the best way that I can describe them, and it's a bit of a dark art, is I'm sure we all remember the PPE scandal that took place in the UK, where people found out that the bank had sold them unwanted insurance on their credit cards. We've got somebody who will talk to you to work out if there's a potential for saving on the way you're being charged. So this is not the cost of your energy, it's the way that the charging takes place. It's looking at the meters that are being used, looking at the historic way that you were charged for what you were doing to see if there are any ways of saving money. And the way that they operate, dead simply, is they would do a call first of all, assess what's going on with you, and having done that, they're either going to go, do you know what, this is going to be a waste of our time, we don't think we can add any value, or they're going to be, in a nice way, either mildly excited or jumping up and down saying, we think that we can help you. And they operate on a success basis, so no cost for you, worthwhile getting somebody to see what can be done in terms of how you're being charged. But as the point there also says, it's worthwhile getting an audit taken place of how you're actually wasting energy on a regular basis. Stating the bleeding obvious, if there are massive fluctuations in the way that you're heating your building, it costs more. An obvious one is the companies that have the thermostat set for 25 and everyone leaves the office at 5 o'clock. They could have had the thermostat set at 21, 22, or even lower earlier in the day, so that the building cools when there's no one there. Contentious one, switching from electric to gas heating. Is it good for the planet? I'm not going to comment on that. I don't think it is. Things that you can make there. Keeping venting, and you can read this. I don't need to go through this with you, but I'll now move on to the last one, switching supplier. The energy world is filled with cowboys, and I'm sure those of you who run businesses will have had countless people who have got in touch with you in the past and said, oi mate, we can save you some money on your energy costs. Before you slam the phone down, you might have listened to what they had to say, and you might have engaged with one of those companies. I was told that the way that a lot of energy brokers look to operate is they see how much somebody's paying now. They look on their systems to see what the best possible price is, and that allows them to work out the level of the person they're speaking to, how much of a mug they are. So if there's somebody was a 200% mug, they will go back to them and say, good news, I can save you 30%. So you now move from a 200% mug to a 170% mug, because people don't know the dark arts when somebody's looking to review your energy costs. So we actually have worked with the same energy supplier since we started. And the thing that they have come up with is, apart from the fact they've done billions of pounds worth of energy deals, it's totally transparent. All that's needed is a copy of somebody's utility bill. You then get an economic report, And that economic report says what is happening in the market now, what is likely to happen. So the SME owner can either go, do you know what? I can see that the trends are that prices are increasing, but I'm going to go for a short-term fix now because I know that my business will be hopefully in a better position later on. So you're making the decision based on that economic report as to which way you should act. The report then shows all of the short-term options, all of the medium-term options, and all of the long-term options. So you can look at it and go, I'm going to choose to go for a 12-month deal. Yes, I'm making a short-term saving because I've been told that prices are likely to go up later on, but I know that in 12 months' time, X in terms of debt across the business will have gone, and we're going to better be able to absorb it. The way that the system works is once the bill has been received, it will have on there when your current contract matures. If your current contract matures in longer than 12 months, you're just on the tracking system and you'll get notified near that end date. If it's less than 12 months, you've then got a lead-in time during which you can decide when you want to act. And hopefully there might be some questions on that in a second. The system's free to use. It's totally transparent. There are educated human beings who are going to be able to help and guide you. I guess that some of you may have come across horror stories about companies in certain sectors who, when they were looking to review their energy supplier, the supplier turned around and said, yes, we can renew with you, or we can broker to do this for you. But what we're going to do is we're going to get you to put a chunk of money into escrow. This happens a lot in construction companies and quite a lot in hospitality companies, where the energy provider who will have bought the gas or the electricity on the wholesale market is concerned that they've set up a contract with your business and your business goes bust. So they will say, great, we can do that, yeah, but because your credit score is high, yeah, we're going to turn around to you and say, you need to put X £1,000 in escrow. So you've not only got an increase in your utility cost, but you've also got to put money to one side in escrow. If that has happened to anyone or in any way it's a worry, yeah, we have a partner who's able to create, at no impact on your credit score, a credit report that looks at the scores across all the major providers. It looks at Experian, Equifax, Dun & Bradstreet, CreditSafe, etc., etc. It shows what your credit scores are. It shows why your credit score is the way that it is, the reason that it's higher or lower. And their business model, yeah, is if it's impacting on somebody's business, that adverse credit score, their business model is on a success basis, they will get you from where you are now to a pre-agreed figure. So if your credit score at present is 30 out of 100, they will say, get it to 50 out of 100, we get a success fee. Okay. The advantage of that obviously is twofold. Yep. For the client who had to put money into escrow, if their credit score has now been enhanced, they can get that money back. If a client is in the position where they're needing to review and their credit score is worse, that potentially means that, again, they're not going to have to put that money to one side. Yep. And there are going to be a wider number of funders, energy providers who could be interested in helping you. Okay. That credit report service is used by for a bunch of other reasons by companies that we're working with. It'll often be used, a quick anecdotal, company that's looking for funding. We see that their credit score is rubbish. We know the credit score that debt funders work on. We get the credit score improved. The world's opened up. Client can get better rates. and better terms. Okay, so hopefully some questions on that. Our world is with the client that we're engaged with, looking to show them how we can make their lives easier. I mentioned when I began talking that the whole energy world was a secondary service up until quite recently. One of the biggest changes that we've also seen is companies getting in touch with us saying, look, we're thinking of putting solar panels on our roof. We're thinking of putting heat pumps in. Can you give us guidance on that? And quite a significant percentage of those companies have been companies that have been sufficiently cash rich that they can just go ahead and pay for the solar panels outright. So they've approached us, they've been quoted for the solar panels, they've had the from the solar panel provider saying how long it will take for the ROI on it before it becomes cost neutral, and they're making themselves profitable by feeding into the energy system. Wrong words, but hopefully you know what I mean. So they're turning around to us and saying, look, should we just go ahead and buy cash? Yeah. And the way that we jump in there is go, look, okay, talk to one of our asset finance team. They can explain to you how the government's super deduction scheme works, whereby you get corporation tax on the purchase of the asset. They can turn around to you and say, if the cost is £100, yeah, and you borrow 30%, yeah, this is the market in terms of the asset finance providers who are going to be out there looking to help you. These are an indication of the rates, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. If it were to be borrowing 60%, the pool has gone from 20 companies theoretically to 5 companies. The rate's gone from 2% to 5%, et cetera, et cetera. So the company can then walk away and put that into their matrix to work out whether they still want to go ahead and purchase it all cash, whether they want to borrow 30%, whether they want to borrow 60% or whatever. Okay, so that's the assistance on the asset finance side. I mentioned earlier that Swoop deal with over 1,000 different funding providers. I don't know the total number of asset finance providers, but we've got all the good ones, the quirky ones. So if anyone's listening in and they operate an offshore wind farm, I'm sure we'd have somebody who'd be able to help for that. The other thing that happens is when the theoretical company is saying to us, we're thinking of putting solar panels on our roof, they will often also be saying, can you tell us about the grants? Okay. If somebody creates a UMI Swoop account and uses the UMI link to create an account, yeah, there is a series of questions which says, what are you looking for? Equity, grants, or debt? And if you tick grants, you answer 4 or 5 questions, and it then shows you all of the grants that are available for your business based on your sector and geographic location and nationwide. We've currently got 330 live grants on the system. So if you're a bolt cutting business from Bolton, it'll show you bolt cutting grants that are based on companies that are based in Bolton. It would also show you grants that are available to any business that's in the UK that's in the bolt cutting sector, or any business that's recovering from COVID, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. On the grant side, there are 2 sorts of grants. There are capital grants and innovation grants. For the capital grants, you see the link, you read the summary, you go, that looks good, and you apply directly, and if you get a grant, happy days. And if you've created an account on our system, what I would say is get somebody in your team either on a monthly or a quarterly basis, to see new grants as they pop up. And the more frequently you should do it is if you're in a business sector where you're doing something that's more innovative, where you intuitively know there's a greater percentage of potential for getting grants. If you're running a fish and chip shop, probably not much. If you're running an AI business, probably more. The other side to grants are the innovation grants. And innovation grants are if you're doing something that, generally speaking, you could describe as good for Planet GB. Okay. Again, you can go out there and apply directly, but we've also got people who would be able to help you to be able to check to see whether, though you're matched with an innovation grant, the chance of you getting it. They would help you to write the application, and help you throughout the process. The reason for mentioning that into the context of today, is don't be blinkered. Back to what Suzanne was saying, look forwards. Your issue might be, help today, how do I reduce my energy costs? But if you're using our system, you'd be able to see how else we can help you to scale your business. Okay. I think I kind of covered the solar side. As I said, we are getting a significant increase in people who are going, what should we do? But another aspect that's come up is companies where they have the potential for putting solar panels on their roofs. The question we'll sometimes get is, I'm in a leasehold building. Okay. If you're in a leasehold building, the owner of your building should be absolutely delighted that you're enhancing the value of their site by putting in solar panels. So we have yet to come across an owner of a building who wouldn't allow their tenant to put on solar panels. But what this has led to is our clever thinking commercial finance team, or commercial property team, turning around to clients when they're leasing the building, saying, do you know what? You're leasing that building. Why don't you talk to us to see how far you are away from being able to buy another site? So then, rather than making your landlord wealthy by paying them a very small amount of rent for the pleasure of being able to use their premises, why not look to get your own premises? So our commercial team can talk to you about that as well. Have I got anything else to say on this side? I don't think so. Q&As. I'm just checking on my notes that I made from earlier. I think I've more or less covered all the bits that I wanted to cover. I'm now hopefully going to be throwing myself back at your mercy.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Andrew.
Great.
Just a couple of questions, if I can, if that's all right, from a few that were submitted in advance of the webinar. A lot of businesses that we're talking to struggle with making a decision around whether or not they should be looking at a short-term energy contract or whether they should bite the bullet and try and tie themselves in for a longer period because of the uncertainty about what is going to happen with energy price and energy costs. So what would your advice be to a small business who's maybe sitting there thinking, do I go short term or do I go long term in terms of tying myself into a contract around energy?
What we often see somebody who goes short term going, do you know what? I kind of know I'm making the wrong decision, but I'm kind of hoping magically the world's going to be better in X number of months' time. So the people that we work with will be sort of biting their tongue and go, we know you're making the wrong decision and you probably should be going on a long-term basis, but if that's what you want to do, we will put you on the tracking system, you're on it, and we'll come back to you well before the short-term contract you're going on to matures. So it does make sense to go on to a longer contract, but there is that human element where people are going, I think it's going to be okay, I think it's going to get better, and we just have to roll with that. All the indications is we're going to have ongoing problems with energy for at least the next 24. Our energy people might turn around to me and say, Andrew, you said 24 months. It's 36 months, but it's not going away quickly.
Okay.
If you're worried about your business and longer term contract and your business goes under, there isn't a comeback. Your business, no one's going to come after you because the business is just closed.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned during your presentation about escrow accounts. Can you just describe to us what they are, just in case some of the businesses aren't familiar with that kind of terminology? Okay.
Holding account. I'm the energy provider. I'm saying, great. It's going to cost. You were paying £5,000 a month. You're now paying 15 grand a month for your energy. I'm really worried about your business going bust. I'm going to turn around to you and say, we will quote for you, but you've got to give us 45 for us to take you on.
Okay. Brilliant. That's really helpful. Thank you. You also talked about sort of considering moving from gas to electric or vice versa in terms of energy savings. What advice do you have for kind of financing those utility upgrades if people are wanting to invest in changing their heating system, or maybe implementing heating pumps or like you mentioned before, solar panels, those sorts of things? What's the best advice you can give somebody for how to go about financing that?
Okay, so if once upon a time, if you Googled solar panels, you probably wouldn't find anyone. If you now go onto the internet, you're going to find loads and loads of solar panel providers. I've no way of knowing when they come up with their blurb as to why you should use their solar panels and their assessment. But I guess if you're an SME, you're going to talk to 4 or 5. You're going to go, okay, who do I feel comfortable with, and whose projections in terms of my savings is going to make the most sense. Our asset finance team, if that company's saying, do you know what, I'm thinking of putting in a heat pump, I'm thinking of putting solar panels, they would be really happy just have a conversation to go through, okay, we can get you asset finance if the cost of the kit is going to be 10 grand, and if you were borrowing 5, this is roughly what it might cost. This is the likely arrangement fee. This is the likely term. Watch out, these are the penalties if you break the contract early. They're dead happy to do that, because if you're a UMI client or working with UMI, we're not just doing asset finance. So we're not interested in just winning asset finance deals. So it could well be that we go, do you know what? We've told this client what they could do on the funding side for the solar panels. They've decided to purchase it. That client then turns around to us in 3 months' time and goes, you mentioned that VAT funding. You mentioned the cash flow facility. We know that we mentioned the conversation with you, we had some existing debt. We've just won an order in the States. Our turnover is now increased. Do you reckon we can get that debt refinanced at better rates?
Yeah.
So total transparency. The relationship we got with UMI is really important, and that the asset finance team and any team know that and would look after you delegates in a lovely way. I'm not just saying that, folks. I'm not Boris Johnson.
Yeah, great. That's really helpful. I think we'll wrap up there. There haven't been any further questions asked so far. So what I just wanted to very quickly do, if that's okay, is just summarise with a few next steps. So thank you, everybody, for taking the time to attend today's webinar. As I mentioned, everybody gets access to 3 months free to the UMI Sat Nav. So make sure you go on and sign up to that to access your free support for 3 months. Visit the Swoop's Energy Savings page. So there'll be some information in there available for you to take some action following from today's session. We've got a series of webinars still to come. There's 4 more. So please check out those. And also the cost of trading crisis bundle we've put together for you, which has some other resources available on the UMI Sat Nav. One of the ways that we really have found that people can really benefit from understanding how to address their business challenges is to hear from their peers. So please share your experience of how you're tackling the cost of trading crisis using the hashtag cost of trading crisis across social media channels, for example. Go away today and think about the actions that you think you might be able to put in place based on what you've learned, and let us know how you think today went. What else do you think we should be doing to try and support you? And you can help inform the future campaign in terms of any of the other areas of support that you think businesses should be provided with. So if you've got any ideas for content you want us to cover on webinars, or you just want to speak to somebody on an individual basis about your business, pick the phone up and speak to one of our UMI business advisors, and we'll put you on the right path. So I'll leave it there. Thank you again, and I wish you the best of luck with going away and taking some action on how to support you with the rising costs you've got in your business. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks, Andrew.